Sue and Naomi, do you want to start by just introducing yourselves, your names and where you're from?
My name is Naomi Elizabeth Montoya. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico in the United States.
And I am Su Hudson. I am also from Albuquerque, New Mexico in the United States.
Excellent. Naomi, can you please tell me about what your creative discipline or creative disciplines may be?
Well, I think I consider myself to be a multidisciplined artist, and mostly in performing arts. I started out doing painting and a lot of visual art. In middle school, I started with dance, and that has been kind of like the trajectory that I've gone. I've taught for 27 years. Many of those years, 2 decades, has been teaching at a performing arts school, contemporary dance, and I also have been I performed in an Afro-Cuban, Afro-Brazilian dance company, so I would say dance is my primary medium. And here with Su Hudson, we do a lot of multimedia type arts for gallery, for stage, as well as for screen, and yeah.
Excellent. Excellent, that's wonderful. Sue, how about you?
What was the question?
Tell me about your creative discipline.
My creative discipline.
Yeah.
I am a filmmaker with 35 plus years working in the film industry, and for the past 20, Naomi and I have spent those years making site-specific dance films, which is a concept where you take a dancer off the stage and you take them anywhere else. Anywhere else. And so then the meta part of that is then we create these films, and then what we do a lot of times is we'll take it back on stage and create a performance that's film with dancer with, so, or even an installation. We don't always have to be there.
Excellent, excellent. Tell me, maybe collectively but also separately, about your creative process. Like, how do you work as a collaborative team?
So a lot of,
separately.
I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish your question. A lot of times what we do is it's about the location. So we'll have a location, and where the white sands, I don't know if you know them, they're these crystal gypsum white gorgeous sands in southern New Mexico. And the idea of, so we'll know we're going down there, and we'll think about white and color and what we would like to do. I like to work with textiles, like lots and lots of material a lot of times, and so the idea of the sand with yards of taffeta or silk or whatever we can to move with that. And so then we can plan till we're blue in the face, but really until we get there, we don't know what's going to happen. Because we don't know as a dancer.
Well, and I think that's kind of the exciting and spontaneous part of like doing site-specific work, is you may work in a studio and I may have like a short choreography, but once you're there, in fact, when we did that first shoot in White Sands, I had this choreographic phrase ready to go, but then realizing once I got there the unforgiving nature of the sand, you can't stand still because when you move a certain way your foot sinks, and I think that added like a different dimension in how one moves through the space. But I think we found that to be part of the excitement of not knowing what may happen. Like, is it going to be really windy that day? How are we going to work with that?
It's gonna rain.
Yep.
Not in New Mexico, but
So I think, but the long or the short story or the short answer for that is that I think we're primarily inspired by landscape and space. And just since we live and work primarily in New Mexico, there are so many diverse landscapes, and I think that's been definitely like part of the fuel for inspiration and creation.
But not just landscape, space, anything
Yeah,
off the stage.
space.
I mean,
Yeah.
we work in a lot of domestic spaces, exploring like the female experience, like say in a kitchen, but creating a dance in a kitchen or inside a refrigerator, or like domestic space that we use in a very specific way, and then in our real lives, but then using it differently, creating movement in it. And it's interesting because those in particular, after a show, women really want to talk about working in the kitchen and thinking about, because breakfast, lunch, dinner, dishes, wipe it down,
Never
say
ends.
it up. Never ends. And especially as you get older, that cycle is just and over and over and over and over.
But also I think sometimes you think about like historically, like sometimes like the secrets or the gossip or the stories told in the kitchen, it seems to be, even when you have like a party, everyone always seems to gravitate towards the kitchen, even though you have these other fabulous living spaces. It's like that's the place, that's really the hearth of a home, and like what happens in that space. It's like the good, the bad, and the ugly. A friend comes over to tell you a story, you're sitting at the table in the kitchen having coffee or tea to discuss, all of the great things and some of the tragedies of life.
So thinking about your creative process, what is different for each of your creative processes?
I deal with a lot of the technical side of it. I'm looking at light and equipment and, times of day, things like that.
Yes, she actually often keeps me grounded and into the reality, because sometimes I go off into the ether thinking about all of these other things, and then it's helpful. But I think as far as like when I have an idea, I often have to journal about it and let it sit and think about it. And I think sometimes that may be also maybe going into a studio or into a space and doing some improvisational movement, but also coming back to journal about it. And sometimes researching or other ways to like fuel like what's my drive about doing this particular thing, even if it doesn't make sense to maybe the viewer or the public at large. So I think that definitely journaling as well as movement are part of my process. And then of course we talk, and sometimes we argue about what works, what doesn't work, but I think it's that give and take of ideas, and then we finally like always come to this aha moment. We're like, yes, that's it. We finally come to like, because it's like we're each, have these great ideas, but there finally is that like, the connection. Yes, that's it. That's what we're doing. Yes, and we're both super excited about it, and then that continues to drive whatever the project is forward.
I'm behind the camera, she's in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Two different personalities.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your creative routines. Like, what routines do you have to do your creative work? Do you have daily routines, weekly routines? Do you have touchstones that help you into it?
We've been doing this for so long now that a lot of times our work is based on grants that we get. And so sometimes those grants have parameters, and so that will guide a lot of what we do. But when we first started, even then, we've basically been you take it from here.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if there's sometimes like a project that we're excited to be a part of, then that could be the gravitational force that it's like, okay, there's this project, let's be a part of this show. Okay, as a result, what are we gonna do? And then it's like, just like anything, you allot time, you plan time. But I think ultimately, or at least for myself independently, sometimes, I do a lot of journaling, and I always write down like ideas. I find inspiration from dreams. I find inspiration from sometimes music I hear. For a lot of dancers, sometimes they'll hear a piece of music or even like a soundscape, and that's enough of a drive to create something. So I just try to like document ideas, and sometimes those ideas you have to put them on the shelf, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 5 years, and then you could come back to it, but then you're like, here's the completed piece, and then you could make something. But I think, obviously if there's like an end goal, that's definitely more of an incentive to complete something. And I think probably if we didn't have the reality of just daily tasks, to have to complete, we'd probably create a lot more, but trying to fit that in if there's not maybe an end goal is sometimes hard. So.
And the reality is a lot of creatives are working around the edges of paid work or other things.
Right.
And so I'm hearing that is kind of partly what your collaborative work is like. If you were to meet and have a conversation with someone who's really early on in their creative journey, just wanting to kind of dip the toes in and see what it's like, what are the pieces of wisdom that you would want to impart?
Go ahead.
That's a great question. I think that, because I have the last, 2 decades have been working with dancers, I think I just remind them that, even if you don't have support from your family, because a lot of times for creatives, some people are lucky enough to have the support and the understanding of their families to yes, do your thing. But a lot of people unfortunately don't have that support. There are people who understand you and who will support you, and to find friendships of people who will support you in your endeavors. I think that's hugely important, because once you find your creative fellows, then you can really do anything. And so there's that. And the other thing is, just because someone tells you no, I know my personality type is if someone says, oh, you can't do that, that's not a thing, you will never get work like that. That's sometimes been more of a drive to do it and do it really well, to kind of, But ultimately it's most creatives and most artists, I think they will be happiest, because the other thing is a lot of young people think that they're not going to find work working in those fields. And I think if you do what you love, everything else will fall into place, and I think that's really important. I knew as, an artist, as a dancer, as a arts educator, I'm not going to be a millionaire, and I was okay with that. I think, but my life is really happy, and I know people I've talked to who do make a lot more money. It's they just have a lot more stress and a lot more, weight, just because they don't have that freedom to maybe travel and explore and to have fun. And I think the other thing is, part of art making, there's a misnomer about work in general, is that for some people, and you could work in any field, but if you find it fun, then it's probably the thing maybe you should do. And I think, of course, creating art, all of that feeds my soul. So I just think ultimately for a younger person, it's do what you love and everything will fall into place. Don't take no for an answer, and find your people.
Beautiful. Sue?
Learn how to use your camera.
Yeah.
Just use it. Use what you've got.
Yeah.
Don't
Learn how to use your tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you gave great advice to my friend's daughter who was interested in going to film. Do you remember what you said?
No.
It was something about finding your voice.
In Paris.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that was great advice. You should talk about that.
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you would want to share with people who are curious about creativity, creative processes, routines, getting into it, or staying with it?
Apply for grants. Do the work. Know your equipment, and just do it and do it and do it till you get something you like. That's the. It's about keeping it going.
Well, and I think every opportunity you have, even if maybe you do apply for a grant and you don't get it, I feel like it's a learning experience. I think about that also for auditions for dancing and acting. It's every time you do something, you learn. Even if the outcome isn't maybe what you expected, it's just what did you get from that experience? And moving forward, what did you get from that experience? And continuing to learn is, always fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Meg.